I'm carefully tearing the edges of the masking tape to create uneven edges for masking the birch tree trunks. This technique helps to create birch trunks that looks organic, realistic and natural. I tear both sides of the masking tape as shown in the video. I'm using 1-inch masking tape, and after tearing the edges it looked a bit bulky for the birch tree trunk on an A5 paper. So I divided into two strips. One strip is thinner for smaller trunk and other is wider for a thicker trunk. With the leftover pieces, I add a very thin trunk on the left side. This whole process took me about 10 minutes and was a bit messy because the tearing, sticking and adjusting the tape takes some patience. I have not used masking fluid before, but if you have it, you can choose that instead. With masking tape for the birch trunks and glazing and salt technique for the flowers, you can create a beautiful landscape effortlessly. So join me to paint along using watercolor. I'm starting by laying down cadmium yellow at the bottom of the paper as you see in the video. Once the pigment is in place, I'm letting the paper to dry completely. Now the paper is completely dry. I'm wetting the top portion of the paper, making sure not to touch the cadmium yellow. Next we are going to add cobalt blue for the gradient sky. I'm mixing a small amount of permanent orange with cobalt blue to desaturate it, and using a medium value of this mix, I'm painting the sky. As I move towards the bottom, you can see the value reduces because there is less pigment on my brush. If your brush is holding too much pigment, you can release some by dipping it in water and pressing it against the edge of the bottle to take off extra pigment. Next, I'm mixing Prussian blue with a bit of permanent orange in a medium consistency as you see on my palette. Before applying it, I'm wiping the extra pigment that is collected near the tape using a scrap cloth. Now I'm applying that mix of Prussian blue and permanent orange for the distant trees while the gradient sky is still wet. Next, I'm using Prussian blue in a medium consistency as you can see on my palette, and I'm applying it from just below those distant trees, covering all the cadmium yellow that we painted earlier. That is, we are glazing over the cadmium yellow with Prussian blue. After applying Prussian blue, I'm wiping the excess pigment collected near the tape to avoid formation of cauliflower effect. I'm working quickly at this moment because the paper is drying fast, and since we used medium consistency of Prussian blue on dry paper, I have to be fast. Otherwise the salt technique that I'm going to use next won't work. Next we have to add cast shadows for the trees using a thicker consistency of cobalt blue and permanent orange. I'm assuming the light is coming from the left side, so the cast shadows are forming on the right side on the green foliage. Now I'm sprinkling salt generously over the horizon, and as I move down towards the bottom of the paper, I'm sprinkling just a little salt. After sprinkling the salt, I wait for the texture to form, and then I use a hair dryer to dry the paper thoroughly. Since I used medium consistency of Prussian blue, the salt texture is very subtle. If you want more salt texture, you can use a diluted consistency of Prussian blue over the cadmium yellow. I removed the masking tape as you see on the video. Now I'm moving on to paint the roof of the house and the trunks of the birch trees. For the roof, I mix permanent orange with a touch of cobalt blue. For the birch trees, I'm going to apply 3 layers. First, I lay down a light wash of Prussian blue mixed with a touch of permanent orange. While the first layer is still wet, I add a second layer of the same mix at a medium value. For the third layer, I increase the amount of permanent orange in the mix, and using a thicker consistency, I paint at the right side of the trunk to show the shadow part of the trunk. This technique creates a three-dimensional effect, making the trunks appear rounded rather than flat. We have finished painting 3 layers on the first and second birch trees. Now I'm repeating the same 3 layer process for the third birch tree. So I'm speeding up the pace. The roof of the house is completely dry, so I gently lift some pigment for the wall of the house. Next, using a gray shade which is made by mixing cobalt blue with small amount of permanent orange, I paint the shadow cast by the roof onto the wall. Next, by mixing permanent orange with cobalt blue, you get a dark gray shade which I use to paint the marks on the birch trees. In this last clip, you can see how adding diluted Prussian blue over cadmium yellow followed by the salt technique creates a stronger salt texture that forms more yellow flowers. Since I wanted subtle effect, I used medium consistency of Prussian blue. You can choose whichever effect you like best. See you in another video. Until then, take care and bye bye from Prema.